Thank you, Tom. Good morning. I'm Sandro Catanzaro. I am running a strategy for publishers at Roku. I joined Roku from the Datasu acquisition, where I was co-founder and chief innovation officer. We're working today with TV publishers, helping them to take advantage of the newest technologies to help them improve their content monetization. It is my pleasure today to talk with you about one of our newest offerings, the Demand API, which has been created to automate the fulfillment of demand for the benefit of publishers, advertisers, and consumers. Demand API is Roku's approach to connecting publishers with real-time description of advertising demand available at that point in time for that device. This demand comes from advertisers willing to invest, placing ads to support the underlying content. We will talk about what it is, how it works, and what are next steps for you in the audience. This type of technology is something that TV publishers and marketers have been asking for, because it brings incremental yield to publishers and incremental reach to advertisers. Also, through automation, it enables all parties to reduce friction in their interactions, further driving investment in TV delivered through streaming, which, as you all know, is how all TV will be very soon. By presenting publishers with demand but allowing them to decide on their inventory allocation, we are creating a scalable implementation, which is encouraging content owners to expose more of their content in the marketplace. So what is Demand API? Demand API is an automated service that is available to publishers working with Roku. At this moment, it is available to a subset of large publishers, but we expect over time to continue expanding the deployment across more of the ecosystem. Typically, the service is queried by the publisher ad stack before each ad break. The stack will call the Demand API and will specify certain parameters with the query. For example, it will say how many ads are required and what are the minimum and maximum duration of those ads. The service will respond in real time with a series of key value pairs that present back that demand. For example, a key value pair can be, we have a 30 seconds ad for the automotive category bid at $20, and another key value pair can be, we have a 15 seconds ad for the insurance category bid at $22. The publisher will feed this information will attach this information into their call to their own ad server, where the inventory allocation happens. This construct allows for an effective competitive separation and frequency control. This is our Demand API landing page. The Demand API is fully self-service for publishers. In this landing page, what we have is a dashboard. This dashboard allows publishers to review the performance of the media they're running, and they can see metrics such as how many queries were placed and how many were filled over the last hours or weeks. Also, through this user interface, they can integrate new sources of demand, including demand from third parties such as SSPs. We made the product self-service to provide publishers with maximum freedom on how to allocate their inventory. The market reception has been very positive, with a strong adoption across most of the well-known brands in content. Our first publisher went live in May this year. We're rolling out the solution to more publishers to an implementation about which we're going to be talking more later. Demand API brings benefits to all parties in the ecosystem. For publishers, it reduces inventory waste for up to 25%. And this is because of a higher fill rate on ad calls. Because publishers can expose more of their inventory, it's more likely that an advertiser will find that household they're trying to reach, increasing the fill rates. It also simplifies how publishers receive demand by consolidating all demand in real time across disparate systems and translating it into a single standard format and providing publishers with a single user interface to manage the collection of this demand. And it also keeps the publisher in full control of their inventory allocation. Now, for advertisers, this allows them to increase the reach of the campaigns they're running because more of their inventory is now exposed to them and they can see and they can find that household they were looking to show a message to. It also provides the ability to do one-to-one targeting because it relies on best-in-class ideas to match audiences and target households. And it maximizes campaign performance because more ad opportunities are exposed. Advertisers can pinpoint target that specific household they were looking for the direct response campaign. From the perspective of consumers, because it will eliminate non-relevant ads, it will reduce ad load. It also controls frequency, reducing repetitive exposure, which is something consumers do not like. And finally, it continues funding the best content through advertising, which is something very important to Roku, as we think that this further drives the whole ecosystem success. Let's talk about features now. The Roku Demand API provides reports where publishers can see what is the bidding behavior of advertisers. These reports, they can see them in the user interface, but they also can schedule to be delivered automatically to their email inboxes on a daily or weekly basis. Metrics they can see in these reports include what is the bid density, which type of inventory is most sought after, and what is the evolution of this behavior over day. Demand API also provides publishers with tools to self-service provide themselves with an incremental demand from parties such as SSPs. Publishers who use the tool can log in and create a bidder only by entering a few parameters such as the seat ID and type of media they want to target, their own channels, devices they want to use, and allocating them to a share of voice. That bidder can be placed in tiers. And then once their bidder is ready, they can be launched and goes immediately into service. And also, because the Demand API provides the ad category for each individual ad, it provides effective means for competitive ad category separation. Advertisers are not pleased when an ad of their competitor plays exactly after their own ad in the same ad break. So through this construct, through this methodology, publishers can ensure that doesn't happen and also block the same ad playing twice in the same ad break. All these features have been implemented successfully for large publishers across different ad servers. Let's talk about the roadmap. These features are under development and we expect to deliver them during year 2021. We'll provide publishers with insight about the audience that is consuming their media. These insights will go from demographics such as age, gender, and income, but additionally, we'll have insights about media consumption and metrics of reach about the publisher. We're also rolling out variable bidding across all sources of demand. This will create a dynamic market and provide tools to publishers to further improve their monetization of inventory. We're also going to provide avenues for publishers to leverage data from Roku for targeting their own media. This is a very exciting feature because it streamlines how publishers can make their own media addressable. And we And you all know that Roku is fully committed to a safe and healthy advertising market. At this point, in this moment, fraud rates are extremely low. However, we're still rolling out features that will make it even harder to create any type of fraud in the ecosystem. I know many of you have been waiting for a slide with a lot of boxes and arrows, so here it is. Here we're going to be describing in even more detail the technical way the demand API works. In the middle of this diagram, we have a purple rectangle, and this is the demand API endpoint. On the left, this blue rectangle is the publisher app or mediation layer. So this process starts with the mediation layer app making a call into the demand API endpoint, specifying how many ads it wants to receive, what is the minimum or maximum duration for those ads, and also parameters about the household that is making that is going to be underlying those ads. Once the demand API receives that call, it will open calls to downstream systems such as Roku demand and demand for third parties if the publisher is interested in doing so. This is number 2 here in the graph. Once those systems answer back with the demand they have, the Roku demand API will consolidate these calls in the format of key value pairs I described earlier, and will answer back to the calling entity in number 1. So this calling entity being either the app, the publisher app, or the mediation layer. The publisher app or mediation layer will take this information about demand, attach it to a call into their own ad server, to the publisher ad server, and send that call. Within the publisher ad server, line items would have been set up with different key value pairs for each of them. If a line item hits the key value pair, then the ad server will fetch the creative in number 4, calling again the demand API and receiving back the creative. With the creative, that creative is going to be stitched into the content, sent into the ad player when the content is played, and as the content plays, pixels will fire confirming that the impression was rendered. I mentioned we're rolling out more of these, more publishers, demand API to more publishers. We're going to be doing that in 2 steps. In the first phase, only step number 1, meaning the call from the publisher app into the demand API and receiving an answer back, is going to be necessary. In a second phase, we're going to be working with the publishers to execute steps 3 and 4 of the integration. So, what is next? As I mentioned, we're going to be rolling out the specification for the integration before the end of the year 2020. The integration is very straightforward and requires a limited code change for which Roku will provide a template. We're doing the implementation in 2 phases. In the first phase, only calls to the endpoint are necessary. And we're not going to leave for later the full ad server integration. As Wendy mentioned earlier, the requirement for the first phase integration is only needed for certain publishers. Publishers with those publishers will have an advertising relationship with Roku in the US, will have over 100,000 hours per month of streaming over the previous 3 months, and over 10,000 installs per month over the previous 3 months. Only publishers who fit these 3 conditions are required to do the first phase of the integration to complete their app certification. Publishers who are in this category and do the integration, as I mentioned, it's a very straightforward integration, will enter into a pipeline and do not need to modify the monetization channels at this point. All the monetization channels stay intact. We're going to be prioritizing the pipeline for full integration by volume and specific reach. As we go through the pipeline, we'll be calling publishers to complete the integration, complete phase 2 of the integration. During phase 2 of the integration, we'll need to do some additional work, which is going to take about 3 to 5 weeks to set up the line items in that server and also ensure that systems are reporting correctly and well aligned. Only at that point will define a production date and go into full production. We're expecting to continuously expand demand API coverage to even more publishers, as well to automate more and more of our systems. We really believe that technology can make our lives easier and give us more free time to do what we like, which is happy streaming.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that overview, Sandro. We're now going to open it up for questions from the audience. So if you can go ahead and turn on your camera and your audio.
Hello.
Hey there, Sandro. Welcome. All right, so let's just give it a moment here for some questions to start coming in from the audience. Or of course, if anybody wants to raise their hand as well.
Maybe the presentation was so thorough.
It seems like it. Here we go. We have an attendee raising their hand. So, Greg, you are now allowed to talk. If you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, I work on the ESPN app, and we have a RAF integration for the part of the app that shows linear programming. It's not the ESPN Plus content; it's the ESPN cable channel content. And so I'm thinking about the demand API, and I'm thinking about a RAF integration, and I'm just curious. I'm curious about the component, the app integration component, and then it also sounds like there's an ad server integration component where we would have to loop in our ESPN ad server team and Roku to talk about changes to the way that they set up their ad server. And that part I don't quite understand, but I'm curious if you could add some more detail to those two integration efforts.
Yes, sure. So as I was describing during the presentation, the demand API has these two components. First is fetching demand. Usually that call happens a few seconds before going into the break, or a few minutes. And during that point, our systems and also external systems, if desired, can provide details about demand available. That information is then sent into the ad server. So in the case of RAF integrations, there is a few different architectures that are in play. In some cases, depending how it has been done, publishers do receive the ads directly from the RAF call. In other cases, what happens is the ad is set from the ad server itself. So what we are trying to do with Demand API is simplify the way demand is provided. And we expect that as we go through the specifics, I mean, we probably need to go into the specifics of the architecture you guys are using. But the idea is that you could make a call with the number of ads you are expecting, and we can answer that call in real time. And that call, without the information about what demand is forwarded into your ad server, where the actual allocation happens.
I see. Okay. And is there a special? Oh, I'm sorry. Is there a special integration effort with the people who manage the ad server?
Yes. So we will work with you in doing the setup with the ad server. This process takes, it is very straightforward in reality, but it's something we need to do together so we can see the handshake between the key value pairs we have allocated and the line items that have been set up within the ad server. Part of the effort is also to ensure that there is very successful competitive separation between different ad categories, right? So you don't play two auto ads one after the other, or the same ad twice.
Sure, gotcha. Yeah.
So that's why we believe that doing the allocation within that server is very powerful, because it unifies the competitive separation in one single place.
Got it. Okay, cool. So with our RAF integration, we might need to do some special work, but it's likely that we'll have to sync up with Roku just to talk about the specifics.
I think that is the best way moving forward. But the changes in the app are relatively small, so we think it's going to be very straightforward to work together.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, awesome. Thanks for raising your hand, Greg. We appreciate that. So I now have a question from Mahali Benke. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. It's a two-part question. So the first question, Sandro, is whether there's any special consent or terms for expansion requirement around the demand API. So I think that's more on the legal side.
So maybe I'm not understanding correctly the question. Consent from whom? From the consumer? From
the consumer.
Yes. So from the consumer perspective, these are going to be just normal ads. There is no anything specific. All the different types of consent consumers provide today still apply, and there is no really difference. The consumer will not see any different experience when they are receiving a demand API ad.
Right. And the second part to the question, if you want to comment on this, is regarding the source of this information. So the question is the source of the household target information gathered from across all channels that the user streams, or is it based only on the particular channel's usage habits that the ad will appear within?
So the information of who the user is comes from the regional channel. Data about the consumer is, I believe, is coming from the original channel.
Excellent. So Sandro, it really does look like you knocked this presentation out of the park. Oh, here we go. So we have another one from John George. So he's asking, how will the demand API handle users' device settings for limit ad tracking?
That's a great question.
It is.
I mentioned there is extra parameters that the publisher app will send forward to the endpoint. One of them will be limited ad tracking. In those cases, the ads received may not use any information about who the user is, and depending on the application, it may be just standard ads without any specific targeting information.
Right on. Yeah, great question, John. Okay, so we do have a little bit more time if anybody has additional questions for Sandro.
So to complement that previous question, the typical parameters we're expecting are the COPPA flag, the limited ad tracking flag, and also the US privacy strain. Depending on the publisher, some of these parameters are preset, and in other cases are set on a household by household basis.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so it looks like the audience has had the opportunity to ask all their questions. Sandro, we do appreciate your time. I think now what we're going to do is actually wrap this up a little bit early, and we'll go over to our second and final break for the day. So when we return, it'll be, let's say, a little bit before 11:40. We'll take a 15-minute break, and then we'll get back to the final stretch of the program. Thanks, Sandro, so much for hopping on.
Thank you very much. It was great to talking with you all, and we're very excited about rolling this out.
Excellent. Thanks, Sandro.